Welcome back to the Retro Vault, where we look at and dive into stories from games of old. In the previous episode, we looked at the story behind a rare hack and slash game called Samurai Western. This time we'll be looking at the story from Alice Madness Returns. Alice Madness Returns is a game that is a follow-on from American McGee's Alice, a game which is considered a cult classic, which itself released in the year 2000. I only played the first 30 minutes of that one and never returned to it, but anyway, it took 11 years to get the sequel. This game is classed as a platforming hack and slash action-adventure game. Players control the titular character Alice as she jumps through this twisted version of Wonderland and battles various corrupted entities to not only save Wonderland, but her friends there too. I managed to find a physical copy of the game at a gaming market, and after playing it, I'm glad to have this as part of my physical collection of games. But onto the video. To start, I'll go over the events of what happened prior to this game, so you'll get a quick recap of what Alice had been up to. Please note there will be spoilers in this one for American McGee's Alice and Alice Madness Returns, but with that said, let's begin. In the year 1863 in Victorian London, Alice Liddell wakes up from a dream that she's having of a place called Wonderland. She's awoken by the fact that her family's home is on fire. She's able to save herself, but her entire family is killed, and she suffers serious burns. Catatonic, she is taken to a place called Rutledge Asylum, where she receives treatment over a few years. However, this treatment fails. A toy rabbit then calls for her help, and she escapes, in her mind, to Wonderland. But because of her fractured mind, Wonderland has become a twisted version of itself and is no longer the safe haven she remembers. She meets the Cheshire Cat, follows the White Rabbit, and speaking with some villagers, she learns that it is the Queen of Hearts who has plunged Wonderland into this state. Alice is to be the champion that will save Wonderland. She meets an old gnome who accompanies Alice through a place called the Fortress of Doors. She passes through to a place called the Vale of Tears. Alice, throughout her time here, finds out that Wonderland is this way because of Alice suffering from survivor's guilt. She needs to slay the Queen of Hearts in order to restore Wonderland. Defeating the Queen Sentinel, the Jabberwock, defeating the Red King, killing the Mad Hatter, befriending the Griffin, and travelling to Queensland to face the Queen, the Cheshire Cat appears and tries to tell Alice about the Queen's true nature, but he is killed before he can tell her. Defeating the Queen, Wonderland is now restored, along with various individuals there, and with peace of mind now, Alice leaves the asylum 11 years later and is now 18 years old. 1 year after her release from Rutledge Asylum and now 19 years old, Alice is living at the Houndsditch Orphanage, where she is under the care of a Dr. Angus Bumby, a scientist who uses a revolutionary technique involving hypnosis in order to erase traumatic memories from the minds of children. Alice believes that she has been cured, however she does occasionally suffer hallucinations of Wonderland. Dr. Bumby gives Alice an errand to undertake, to collect some pills from their high street chemist. Leaving the orphanage, Alice comes across a white cat, and following it, she ends up in an alleyway where she is confronted by some people who appear to have heads resembling the Jabberwock. She is having another of her hallucinations, and turning around, she spots a lady who works at the orphanage, Nurse Witless. Alice is not happy to see Witless, as she'd previously blackmailed Alice in regard to a confession. Alice previously stated that she'd accidentally caused the house fire that killed her family, and Witless, who overheard her session with Dr. Bumby, threatened to tell the police unless Alice gave her money so she could feed her alcohol addiction. Anyway, remember Alice's toy rabbit? It was her only possession to have survived the house fire. Well, it is currently lost, and Nurse Witless states that she has information on where it might be, so Alice follows Witless to a rooftop where she has another hallucination of Witless becoming the Jabberwock. This causes Alice to have a mental breakdown as she is transported, once again falling down into Wonderland. Arriving in the Vale of Tears, it's still not the place she once knew, as speaking to the Cheshire Cat, she learns that there's a new ruler there in Wonderland, and it threatens to shatter Alice's sanity. She finds the elixir that shrinks her, and she also finds forgotten memories scattered about the place. She also gets reunited with a weapon called the Vorpal Blade, which is taken from what remains of the Jabberwock. This comes from a poem that Alice read as a child, which stated that the Vorpal Blade was used by an unknown hero to slay the Jabberwock. True to what the Cheshire Cat said, Alice finds the place crumbling as she passes through it, as what starts off with an idyllic jaunt through familiarity turns to a twisted darkness which has a bunch of evil creatures blocking her way. Defeating them, she meets the Duchess, the previous owner of the Cheshire Cat, and she's in her kitchen, cooking. Despite having to kill her on her last jaunt into Wonderland, The Duchess is friendly towards Alice and requests pig snouts for whatever it is she's cooking. So Alice goes out and finds some, using a pepper mill to, well, pepper them. Leaving after helping the Duchess, the pepper mill comes in handy in order to fight off other evil monsters in Wonderland. Eventually, Alice is able to follow the railway line to reach a gondola that takes her straight into the Hatter's domain. The Cheshire Cat says the Hatter's domain has changed since her last visit, and advises her to find the Hatter. Making her way around the various lofty platforms, fighting more enemies and finding doors that force her to confront her traumatic memories, Alice eventually finds the Mad Hatter, or rather his head, and reuniting him with his nearby torso, he tells her that the crafty Dormouse and the Hare had schemed against him. He explains that they've taken control of his domain and the factory. He promises to help Alice, offering to tell her what's corrupting Wonderland, but only if she helps him in reuniting him with his missing body parts. So she goes off in search of those parts. It's not long before Alice comes across the Dormouse, and avoiding his traps, she's able to secure the Hatter's arms. After she makes her way to another part of the factory and comes across the Hare. Once again avoiding the traps that he's using, Alice manages to obtain the last thing she needs, which are the Hatter's legs. Returning to the Hatter and with him finally put back together again, he doesn't tell her what she needs to know, but he takes her to another part of the factory. Later, after moving through it a short way, Alice sees the train that the Hatter had previously mentioned. This is the cause of the corruption, something that is called the Infernal Train. It's now left the factory and is headed straight into Wonderland. The Dormouse and the Hare carry off the Hatter, and Alice prepares to fight a machine that the two schemers built and are inside of. However, their creation falls apart before the fight can even start. Hatter is then able to free himself, and with the Dormouse and the Hare dead, and with his factory collapsing around him, the Hatter slips into delusion and says that all he ever wanted was a tea party. Alice demands to know where the train is going, but he starts to drink tea with the corpses of the Dormouse and the Hare. Demanding once again, the Hatter still doesn't tell her, and he is then crushed by the falling debris, with Alice stating that he deserved to die as he did not keep his end of the deal. She then drowns in a sea of tea. Alice is now back in London and is pulled from the River Thames by two fishermen who plan to take her to a place called the Mangled Mermaid, which is a brothel, as one of them planned to, well, do horrible things to her. Alice tells them off and walks towards the Mangled Mermaid, as it just so happens that her old nanny, named Nan Sharp, now works there as a prostitute. Approaching, Alice spots Nan hanging out the window where she's having an argument with a pimp, who it seems owes her money. The pimp, Jack Splatter, claims the prostitutes owe him money, and he says that he'll get it. Going inside to speak with Nan, Alice hears things being smashed and thrown around upstairs, and she finds Jack Splatter up there beating Nan. Alice attempts to intervene, and Jack hits a lantern off the side, causing a fire, and hits Alice, knocking her out. Alice then finds herself back in Wonderland again. This time she's in a place called Tundrafall, an icy location located above somewhere known as the Deluded Depths. Exploring this area, it was the location of a race held by the dodo, but the animals competing in it were frozen solid and had been partially eaten by something. Those things are ice snarks, ferocious creatures that Alice soon has to deal with. She eventually comes across the Mock Turtle, another animal from Alice's past, who used to be the station master of the Looking Glass Railway, but who now captains a ship he'd named after his friend and comrade, the Griffin. They both travel to the Deluded Depths and try to avoid many sharks that are after them, and there, after a rough landing, Alice asks Mock Turtle about the train. He tells Alice he's far too afraid to speak of the infernal train due to the manner in which he was replaced as the station master. He tells Alice that she should instead direct her questions about the train to the Caterpillar. He does give Alice a ticket to a show by the Carpenter at a theatre called Drury Lane though, and she heads into the nearby town of Barrel Bottom. There, Alice finds the theatre and heads into the auditorium to speak with the Carpenter. Another person Alice has met before, he tells her that his show is nearly ready and he requires her help. She asks about the train corrupting Wonderland, but the Carpenter's sole focus is his show, and, you guessed it, Alice needs to help him before he is to help her. There's quite a lot to do actually, indicating that he's nowhere near being ready for the show, but nonetheless, Alice goes off in search of what the Carpenter needs. Fetching the script from the writer, the music from the conductor, and the stars of the show, Alice speaks with the Carpenter atop a walrus, but he decides that he's going to betray her and traps her in a graveyard where she must fight off the spirits of fallen sailors in order to escape. Granting these spirits eternal rest, she's able to leave and makes it back to the theatre in time for the show to begin. During the show, however, the walrus interrupted the show and began eating the starlets along with the citizens of Barrel Bottom. Alice is angry and lets the carpenter know about it. He states that he was attempting to hide Wonderland from the infernal train, just as the infernal train smashes through the town. Before he dies, the carpenter tells her the same thing the mock turtle did, and that she needs to seek out the caterpillar. With her dying in Wonderland, Alice wakes up back in London again. With the mangled mermaid burning to the ground thanks to the actions of Jack Splatter, Alice finds that Nan is not wanting to speak about the fire that killed Alice's family, telling her that she needs to move on. Alice says that Nurse Witless mentioned that Nan may have her rabbit. She says that Wilton J. Radcliffe, the Liddell's family lawyer, wrote the inquest into the fire, so she drops her off close to Radcliffe's home. Making her way to the lawyer's home, Alice enters and heads past all the ornate Ming Dynasty vases and oriental artwork that Radcliffe collects. His obsession with items from the Orient is down to his parents.
Radcliffe asked me in just the once. Odd duck. Very proud of his artifacts. Ming, I think he said. And partial to Tokugawa Japan. Doesn't seem the samurai type, but perhaps that's why.
Entering his office, he has Alice's rabbit, and he tells her that she abandoned it at Rutledge Asylum, and he also says that his inquest mentioned that the Liddell family died via misadventure, i.e. it was an accident, but that Alice could not accept it and held herself personally responsible for it. He had written that the cat had knocked over a lamp which caused the fire to start and spread, but he mentions that Alice's older sister Lizzie had locked her door, hadn't woken up, and had died in her bed. He says that the cat being blamed for it always set Alice off. He mentions that he used to think that she was innocent, but the more that Alice went on about the fire, the more he believed that she may indeed have had something to do with it. At some point during her time in the house, Alice ended up in what is the abandoned version of Radcliffe's home, meaning that she's now back in Wonderland after having suffered another mental breakdown. Walking a short way down the street, she spots the infernal train on its journey through Wonderland, and she's now in what was earlier the Vale of Tears, but is now the Vale of Doom. Moving through it, Alice hears the caterpillar, who surrounds her with smoke from a hookah pipe, and she is transported to the Oriental Grove. This place is, as you'd probably have guessed, influenced by what Alice just saw in Radcliffe's home. All the decorations there have manifested this place in Alice's vivid imagination. Here she comes across and has to fight samurai wasps, and also their leaders, daimyo wasps. Coming to a strange door with fire behind it, not the first one she's seen there on her travels, she's able to recall a lost memory. That the family cat, Dinah, was in her room with her on the night of the fire and showed her a way out of the house, so it can't have been Dinah that caused the fire, and that all there was in terms of the lamp was one on the landing acting as a nightlight. With this revelation spurring her on to find out what really caused the fire, she eventually comes to the caterpillar's temple, and at the bottom of it she finds him in a cocoon. He tells her that if she saves Wonderland, she may be able to save herself. This also means that Alice needs to find self-acceptance. He says that the Queen must be served in all of her guises. He does say as well that the train is another of Alice's creations, and not only that, but the Queen is someone that Alice knew and loved once. With the place around them falling apart, the caterpillar breaks free from his cocoon and becomes a butterfly. A bright light blinds Alice, and she finds herself in London, where a butterfly is flying outside the window. Alice gathers herself, and she is woken up inside a jail cell. It seems that Alice had a seizure in the street, so the police took her there. Leaving, it's not long until Alice is back in Wonderland after suffering another seizure, and she's in Cardbridge, a location high up in the skies above Wonderland. Moving to and from each of the platforms made up from playing cards, Alice eventually finds herself in the now corrupted and falling apart Queensland, where she previously defeated the Queen. Fighting numerous card guards, Alice comes across the White King, who she had also defeated previously. The only way through him is to kill him, but he knows that, and before she does so, he tells her and warns her about the executioner, who is nearby. Well, Alice soon meets this executioner. He's far too big to face, so she must run from him. Doing so, she comes to the castle's courtyard, where she finds a cake there saying, "Eat me," and eating it she grows even bigger than the outsized executioner. He's there and she stomps on him, crushing him and killing him. Rampaging through the castle grounds, she destroys numerous tentacles, card guards, and most importantly, the Queen's hearts all over the courtyard. Destroying the final one, Alice drinks a liquid and shrinks back down to her original size. During Alice's time here, and in other places in Wonderland for that matter, she encountered more of the fiery doors, and behind them, each one gave her a piece of her memory back and allowed her to paint a better picture of what happened on that fateful night. As we mentioned, she recalled that the cat couldn't have started the fire, but she also, and most crucially, remembered that her older sister Lizzie's room was furthest from the fire, but the theory of the smoke killing her held no weight. She then remembers seeing a mysterious figure creeping around the house late at night, and this person went into Lizzie's room. She also recalls how Lizzie's body was in fact found killed and not burnt, meaning that whoever this man is killed her. Anyhow, Alice comes across the corrupted Queen of Hearts, who says that the infernal train is trying to destroy all parts of Alice's past, especially her memory of the fire. She asks her who it is that benefits from Alice's madness. She says that it's Alice's fault for not stopping the train from travelling through and corrupting Wonderland because of her inability or refusal to simply see what is around her. Alice is then grabbed by the tentacles of the Queen and sent into a nightmare of her past in the Rutledge Asylum. Walking through the corridors, seeing memories of Dr. Wilson and the orderlies there, Alice sees all the experimentation that was done on her. In the waiting room, she sees a surreal vision of Dr. Bumby, Nan, Witless, and Mr. Radcliffe, all talking about her inability to just forget, and said that she'd either have to do so or spend her entire life there at Rutledge. Managing to leave this nightmare, Alice finds herself in London's Hyde Park. She comes across a dying child who is missing her bottom half. Her final words are used to tell Alice to save the other children and that a new evil, even worse than the Queen of Hearts, reigns. After the child is dead, Alice walks forward and sees a vision of her home on fire. Entering, she is transported back to Wonderland and to the dollhouse. The dollhouse is a land of toys that had been abandoned by children, as well as broken and traumatized children themselves. Meeting a group of these children, they ask for Alice's help and say that parts of them are being taken by an individual known as the Dollmaker, who is also the individual responsible for the infernal train. They run into their safe house, Fort Resistance, and it's soon clear why. One of the Dollmaker's creations is there and Alice defeats it. Moving through many hazardous traps in the dollhouse, Alice finds another door with fire behind it and remembers the identity of the mysterious man, with it being none other than Dr. Angus Bumby. He had sexually assaulted Lizzie, had killed her, and started the fire that killed Alice's family in order to cover up the act. That's not all. A little further on, deep into the Dollmaker's factory, Alice meets this Dollmaker, and it's a grim representation of Dr. Bumby himself. He shows no remorse for what he did, he even brags about it. His whole shtick of helping young children was him wiping their memories, essentially, in order to sell them as blank dolls, in a sense, and the buyer could do with these children whatever they pleased. Alice is angry at herself for being so blinded by her own pain that she could not see what was going on in front of her. Not only that, but to her as well, as Dr. Bumby intended this for her as well. The Dollmaker takes hold of Alice and turns her into a doll, but she's able to resist. She walks through real-life London and confronts the real Dr. Bumby at Moorgate train station. Accusing him of the things he's done, he says that Alice was too stubborn and powerful and that she would not forget, much to his frustration. He goes on to tell her that Lizzie was a tease and that she got what she wanted from him in the end. During this time, though, a part of Alice's mind is still active in Wonderland and she boards the infernal train. On board is the Hatter, who tells her that even trying to forget was the source of her confusion. The Caterpillar is there too, and he says that Alice's own pain distracted her from what Bumby was doing, and the Queen is there too, telling Alice that Lizzie wasn't talking in her sleep on the night of the fire, but she was in fact protesting against the actions of Dr. Bumby, who was sexually assaulting her. Finally, the Queen of Hearts tells Alice to make surviving the fire worthwhile, and she goes off to confront the Dollmaker. Fighting against and destroying the Dollmaker, Alice is fully back in the real world again, and in front of Dr. Bumby. Alice threatens to expose him by going to the police, but he's confident that nothing will happen, not only because he's covered his tracks well, but also because he's a well-respected professional. No one will believe Alice over him. Realizing he's right, that he will get away with it, Alice, now being visible in her Wonderland dress, pushes Bumby into the path of an incoming train, and he is killed. Wandering outside onto the streets of London, it's now become Londerland, a mix of the two places. The Cheshire Cat tells her that she can't really go home again, that remembering the pain is agonizing, but it's worth suffering for, and that Wonderland is safe in memory, for now at least. What he means is that Alice cannot go back to how things were, and that she has now gotten control of her real physical world by getting rid of the threat to it, and that was of course Dr. Bumby. But that's it for the story of Alice Madness Returns. A thoroughly enjoyable game that I, for the first time playing it, had a great time with, and had fun piecing the story together for. Even if some of the platforming elements did get a bit stale towards the end of the game, there was enough enemy variety and story intrigue to keep me invested in it until the credits. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like as it does help massively. Comment your thoughts below and subscribe if you aren't already. But for now, take care and I'll see you in the next one.